Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey, any youngers. Happy holidays to you. So this is going to be the last podcast episode for 2018, and I wanted to say a big, gigantic thank you to all of you who found this podcast, listened to this podcast, shared this podcast, and just simply for caring about this podcast. I wanted to end the year with a holiday story. About 6 years ago, probably today or yesterday, I was wrapping Christmas presents. That was my livelihood. It definitely wasn't my job title because I was working as an assistant magazine editor for a publisher in a tiny Florida town. My job duties leaned heavily on the assistant part and not so much the editor part. I think I wrote like one or two things in the course of 150 days working there. Honestly, I was mostly in charge of scooping up my boss's dog's poop and dealing with her barking dogs and packing up her Halloween decorations or doing her taxes, and then this year, wrapping her Christmas presents. I was also living back home in my parents' house, and my resume looked more like a list of part-time mistakes than anything that could get me hired at any respectable company. I think I was about 22 and I didn't know who I wanted to be or where I wanted to live. So I was applying for every kind of job, from intro-level sales at a software company because it sounded legitimate, and as a merchandise assistant at Forever 21, as a crime reporter for a Metro newspaper, though crime scared me. I was applying everywhere: California, NYC, Mars. I would apply for like 25 to 45 jobs a day and receive anywhere from 0 to 0 responses a day. I could not get a new job, so I kept working as an assistant magazine editor, clocking in every morning at 9 a.m. and clocking out and practically crying every night at 5 p.m. So around this time, 6 years ago, my boss was making me wrap her Christmas presents, which I should never have been doing in the first place because I am the first to admit that I am a terrible wrapping paper person. It's like the second I touch the paper, it crinkles and wrinkles, and I lack that smooth touch that makes it perfectly cover even the most square-shaped gift. And there were a lot of presents because I guess when you're the publisher of a magazine, you have a lot of people who deserve a knick-knack or two. Okay, so I sat there for a week on my boss's living room floor with rolls of wrapping paper and scotch tape, and I wrapped things. And I broke things by accident, and then I rewrapped them because that was my job. So at last, on the night before Christmas Eve, I finally finished, and I was proud of myself because I was 22, living at my parents' house, and I didn't have a resume that would hold up with any respectable company. I'm talking about you, Google. And I had just finished a week's worth of wrapping presents, and I had the paper cuts to prove it. I was so proud because in that state of mind, it's all about those little things. So the night before, my boss calls me into the office, and I thought that maybe one of those gifts she made me wrap was for me. But she sits me down and she says, "What is your problem?" And I'm wondering what the heck she's talking about. The week before, she yelled at me for laughing with a coworker, but I thought we were way past that, and I stopped laughing. And maybe she noticed that I broke one of her gifts, but she made me wrap 75, and breaking just one on accident is pretty freaking good. But I'm sitting there and I'm turning bright red. I looked at her like a dog who was caught peeing on green carpet and is confused over what they did wrong because they maybe thought it was grass, but they maybe just weren't sure. "You wrapped all these presents badly on purpose," she said. "Look, it's obvious." I wanted to say everything to her. Everything like, I spent a week wrapping 75 presents and it's not even part of my job or adding any value to the 2 degrees I earned. But I wrapped them anyway, and I think that over the time, I got better and I kind of enjoyed myself. And you know what? Happy holidays to you too. But I said nothing. I left that next day and I went to the airport. I took a flight to New York City and slept on a couch. I went to Kinko's on 34th Street and printed out 15 resumes. Walked into the ground floor of 15 companies and tried to get an interview with anyone who would meet me. I got 4. And when people asked why I wanted to work for them, I'd look at them while thinking about having to go back home and work a job where I was picking up feces from an animal that didn't even belong to me, or baking cakes for a boss that was never, ever going to give me the chance to do what my job title actually hinted I should do. And that look, I'd like to think, translated into, because I'm willing to do anything, because I don't have anything to lose. So that was the year I stopped making New Year's resolutions. It was the year I realized you don't need to wait until December 31st to make changes in your life. You can get up from your desk or your bed or your IKEA suede couch and do something right now, anytime, even on a random day like July 15th if you want. It was that year that I realized that we're all a little miserable with ourselves. Isn't that why we vow to change as many things as our brain can throw up in the 10-second countdown before the evening of the 31st? We're all spending too much money or texting too much instead of being present, or eating way too many carbs and not spending enough time on that elliptical machine. We're all in need of something. So there's no need for lists and open-ended promises, because sometimes those promises are giant. And we'll spend the next 365 days searching for a starting point in a pile of temptations. Figure out what's making you feel off-balanced, unhappy, and start the journey of changing it. Because if you don't, you'll feel like you used to feel when you were a child and would pee in your pants and then sit there for 30 minutes before telling the teacher or an adult to do anything about it. Don't sit there in your own year and this year. That's my wish for you and for myself. Hey, promise yourself one thing. Be in a different place in your life next year than you are right now. Whatever's making you a little ruffled, reach out and wrap your arms around it. Change it. Do it. Embrace it. No matter what day of the year it is. See you in 2019, my friends. Hey, thanks so much again for listening to You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. If you love this show, it would mean the world to us if right down below you just wrote a short review on iTunes. Hey, also, come hang out with us in the You're Not Getting Any Younger secret Facebook group. We would love to have you there. Hey, you! Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.